It's crazy the lengths people will go to just to get a little money. Desperation can make you do things you never thought you would. Well, I'm one of those desperate people. My need to get my daughter the life-saving treatment she needed is what pushed me to this point. Now that same desperation has left me in constant fear about what could happen next to Danny and me, even though the ordeal is behind us. I was out of options. I needed cash, and fast. I couldn't get a loan, and the damn insurance company refused to cover the treatment, saying it wasn't part of our policy. My job barely paid above minimum wage, and I still needed almost $5,000. The only way out was to find another job working the graveyard shift, at least until I had enough saved for her treatment. Danny was all I had left. I'd already lost her mom in that car accident a year ago, and I couldn't let her slip away too. I searched everywhere. I scoured the classifieds and drove all over town, desperately trying to find a job that paid enough and had night shifts available. It felt hopeless, but I couldn't give up. The town we lived in was small, and decent jobs were hard to come by. Then just when I was starting to lose hope, I stumbled upon a job opening at a small grocery store about a mile from our place. The store was called Joe's Nighttime Convenience and Grocery. It was a peculiar little place, closed during the day and only open from around 8 p.m. until sometime before morning. The strange hours seemed odd, and I wondered who would even shop at a store that was only open in the dead of night, and especially with 24-hour options around. But none of that mattered. I needed a job, and those unusual hours actually suited the schedule I was looking for. So I decided to give it a shot. I was heading home after finishing a shift at my day job. My friend Kathy had been good enough to watch Danny while I worked, and she even agreed to keep helping out if I found a graveyard shift somewhere else, at least for a month or two if I needed it. Since I had noticed the shop and its odd hours, I figured it was worth checking out. The place seemed a bit strange, and I worried there might be something shady about a store only open at night. But despite my doubts, I knew this was my best chance at landing a job that fit my skills and guaranteed a night shift. I got out of my car and walked up to the entrance. The store looked pretty run down, but there were still signs posted out front. Sale notices and clearance items were advertised, and the somewhat normal appearance of the grocery store put me at ease and encouraged me to follow through with my plan. As I got closer, I noticed a mark under the first part of the store's name, Joe's. It looked like some kind of Japanese kanji or something. I stepped inside, and the place seemed deceptively large compared to how small it looked from the outside. There were aisles filled with groceries, household supplies, and even a few racks of clothes. I couldn't believe how big the store actually was. Most of the shoppers seemed pretty normal at first glance, though you could tell some folks preferred shopping at night. I tried not to stare, but I must have let my eyes linger too long on one person, who shot me a murderous glare in return. The staff looked about as ordinary as any you'd see in other stores. They were a pretty diverse group, with no one standing out as overly cheerful or particularly gloomy. I did notice that there wasn't much chatter around the checkouts, though. I moved toward the front, hoping to find the manager's office and inquire about a job. My spirits lifted when I spotted a sign that I thought read, "Help Wanted," but when I got closer and read the whole thing, I felt a bit confused and less optimistic. The sign said, "Help Wanted, but not always needed." I wasn't quite sure what to make of that, so I decided to find someone to ask about it. As I approached the back office and raised my hand to knock, I was interrupted by a large man wearing a blue store apron and a name badge that read, "Store Manager Benny." The big guy greeted me with a pleasant, though slightly strained, "Hello, can I help you find something today?" I was a bit distracted by the almost pained expression on his face, like his smile was so forced that it might break if he kept it up any longer. Shaking off the distraction, I remembered why I was there. "Yes, I was actually looking to apply for a job here," I said, pointing to the help sign near the door. Benny's smile faded as he glanced at the sign, then back at me. He looked like he was about to say something when he held up a finger and pulled a radio from his pocket. "Molly, what's the bagger situation today? How are we holding up staff-wise?" There was no immediate response. He flashed that unsettling smile again, drumming his fingers on his tie as he waited. His face wrinkled a bit as he finally said, "I'm sorry, but I think we might be full at the moment. Thanks for your interest, though." He was about to send me on my way when his radio crackled to life. I couldn't make out everything that was said, but the voice on the other end sounded strange, and I thought I heard something like, "Rob, caught, problem, and bagger got bagged." I couldn't make sense of the strange bits I overheard, but before I had a chance to think it through, I heard Benny mumble under his breath, "All right, but next time answer faster. If it had been a code black and you messed around with those customers, it'd be your ass on the line." I was still standing there, awkwardly silent, when he spun around and the frustration melted off his face, replaced by that awful fake smile. He then loudly announced, "Congratulations! We've got an opening now. Let's get you set up. Can you start tonight?" "Tonight? As in right now?" I asked, completely taken aback that they wanted me to start immediately, without so much as an application or any sort of vetting process. "Yes, right now. Don't worry. We can handle all the legal stuff later. But tonight, we're a bit busier than usual, and we could really use the help. First, though, let's go over the terms and get some mandatory paperwork out of the way." I wasn't exactly sure what he meant by terms, but I figured it might be about the pay. "Sure. What's the pay and benefits?" I knew it was a little forward to ask right away, but I needed the money badly, and I couldn't afford to get lowballed. $45 an hour is the starting pay for baggers, he said, almost making me gasp out loud. That was crazy money for a grocery store bagger. My surprise must have been obvious because Benny raised a hand to stop me from asking more and added, "We value hard work and integrity here, and just a bit of discretion." He chuckled, slapping his knee. "But seriously, there's a non-disclosure agreement you'll need to sign along with the paperwork." He grinned again, and though the mention of discretion in an NDA seemed odd, the pay was double what I was making at my day job, so I was thrilled at the opportunity. He continued, "Health coverage and dental are fully covered, but no life insurance. Those policies tend to have issues for some reason." His grin widened as he said that last part, looking even more forced than before. Despite the unsettling undertones, I could barely hear the warning bells in my head over the sound of my future payday. This felt like a miracle. I'd be able to earn enough money in about a month working both jobs, and I could get Danny the treatment she needed. I didn't need to be asked twice. I quickly accepted the offer. "Smart choice. Welcome to the Shy family. Ed, get out here and get our new hire an apron and a tag, and start with the simple version of the bagger training." An unpleasant-looking older man shuffled out from the back room, holding an apron. He moved with an odd gait, like he might have had an injury or something. I forced a smile and introduced myself, but Ed, as I'd learned his name was, didn't bother to return the gesture. He looked me up and down, then snorted in a way that was hard not to take personally. I decided to let it go and waited for him to speak. Just as I was about to ask when the training would start, he cut me off and asked in a flat, humorless tone, "You know baggin', feller?" "Baggin'? Like bagging groceries?" I tried to clarify. He just glared at me and gave a curt nod. "Well, yeah, I think so. I've never worked in a grocery store before, but I have a general idea of how things should be bagged." He paused for what felt like an uncomfortably long time, just staring at me. I was about to speak again when he snorted and let out a harsh, throaty laugh that ended in a dry coughing fit. After he composed himself, he said, "Not like this. I'm guessing you don't." "All right then, come on. I'll show you how we do the bagging here and go over the other rules. You better listen close though. I ain't one for repeating myself." I nodded and we started toward the back room when the radio on his belt crackled to life and a nervous voice came through. "Code black. Repeat code black." Ed's face twisted in a way that somehow made him look even more irritated than before. "God damn it. More of them fellers already." He turned and stormed off, angrily mumbling into his walkie-talkie, leaving me standing near the back room, dumbstruck and unsure of what to do next. What was a code black? And why did it seem to make everyone so tense? I was about to go find someone when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around to see a woman standing there. Her name tag read, "Assistant Manager Molly." She smiled at me, and it seemed more genuine than the others I'd encountered so far. "I'm sorry we haven't met yet. You must be the new hire. I'm Molly, the assistant manager here. I'll help you with training and orientation. You'll be a great asset to us at She's." She gestured toward the back room doors and guided me through them. We walked down the hall, and I noticed several doors that looked like they led to large freezers. They must store a lot of products to need that many, I thought. Nearby, there were shelves stacked with various items. There were rows of boxes and pallets filled with odd things like chemicals, metalworking tools, hardware, and crates stamped with gun manufacturers' names. Once again, I found myself wondering just what kind of store this really was. Besides the strange inventory, the place was also kind of a mess, and I was relieved that sorting it wasn't going to be part of my job. We eventually made our way to an office room with walls painted in a glaringly bright blue, like something you'd see in a kindergarten classroom. The sight reminded me of when Danny was in kindergarten, and I steeled myself against whatever challenges this job might throw at me. I had to do this for her. The office was pretty bare, just a desk, a couple of chairs, and a file cabinet. What caught my eye were some black characters painted on the bright blue walls, almost like calligraphy. More of those kanji symbols, and I couldn't help but wonder what they meant. Before I could dwell on it, Molly motioned for me to sit down. She gestured toward one of the two chairs, the one facing the desk. I took a seat, and she sat across from me, flipping through some papers on a clipboard. Then she turned around and started rummaging through the file cabinet. As I waited, a sudden shriek echoed from outside, making me instinctively glance at the door. I suppressed a gasp, but Molly didn't even flinch. She just kept searching for whatever she was looking for. I thought maybe she hadn't heard it and was about to say something when she spun back around with a large binder in hand, dropping it onto the desk with a loud thud. "Before we start your training, please fill out this form for your safety and ours," she said, handing me a piece of paper. As I read through it, I realized it was the non-disclosure agreement Benny had mentioned earlier. It struck me as odd that this was the only paperwork required before starting. No tax forms, no payroll setup, no healthcare documentation. I wondered if they were paying under the table, which, to be honest, would help me save money faster with no tax deductions. Without thinking too much about it, I quickly signed, not fully grasping what I was agreeing to keep quiet about, or the consequences if I didn't. Molly took the paper, gave it a quick glance, and said, "Good, that's settled. Now let's get started. This is the employee handbook. We only have one copy, so you'll be doing some light reading for a bit. But since we need the manpower right away, I'll go over it with you quickly, since Ed got indisposed." She grimaced slightly at the last word, checked her watch, and adjusted a dial on her walkie-talkie. She looked back at me and continued, "As a bagger, you're crucial in making sure customers leave satisfied with their purchases. You're one of the last people they'll see on their way out, except in certain circumstances." She cleared her throat loudly, just as a muffled noise came from somewhere else in the back room. Basic rules and code of conduct are as follows. First, you are to bag products to the customer's satisfaction. The first thing you should ask is what type of bags they want. Whatever they say goes, how things are bagged and what bags to use. You are not to ask about or discuss the customer's purchases, no matter how curious you might be or how chatty they get. No questions, period. Understood? She slammed her fist on the binder, startling me enough to make me jump. I quickly stammered out a response, acknowledging her instructions. Yes, understood." "Good," she replied, continuing down the list. "No assistance may be provided to customers for loading or unloading items from their vehicles. If a customer requests help to their vehicle, under no circumstances are you to assist or leave the building with them or any customer, no matter what story they give you. It's our policy, and they know this. If they persist or you feel intimidated or threatened, press the yellow button at the end of the checkout by the bagging station. A security person will escort the offending customer to aisle 4 for processing and detainment." Detainment? They don't just kick them out? I thought that sounded odd. Before I could ask about it, she continued with the next rule. "The most important rule, occasionally there will be a special bag request. You'll know it when you hear it. When ordered, press the black button at the end of the checkout and follow the code black protocol. These guests are typically our highest paying customers and are often here by Mr. Shuri's invitation. They must be attended to as quickly as possible." There it was again, code black. And what special bag was she talking about? Ignoring the concern that must have been creeping across my face, she pressed on. Cell phones, smartwatches, or any device that could be used as a recording tool are strictly prohibited while on duty. This is for the safety of our customers and ourselves. The store closes at 4 a.m. sharp. Any remaining customers will be escorted out, with the only exception being those involved in a code black. No access is allowed to the basement and inventory backrooms. Only managers and stock employees are permitted. Simple enough, right? Any questions? She asked, flashing another smile. Well, I did have a few questions about I started, but she cut me off mid-sentence, talking over me. Good. I knew you were a fast learner. Come on, let's get you out to the check stands and bagging. She grabbed my shoulder with surprising force and pulled me out of the office, back into the main store. A few customers glanced my way as she dragged me along, some even snickering, which made me feel a bit embarrassed. We stopped at a checkout station with a flickering number 3 above it. The other 2 lanes were busy, with customers waiting in line to be helped by a cashier and bagger just a few feet away from where I'd be standing. Molly cleared her throat loudly to get the attention of a young man with dirty blonde hair who wore a rather unimpressed expression on his face. Hey Lee, this is our new bagger. Show him the ropes and take it easy on him. It's his first day. I know it's busy, but we don't need another Rob situation so soon. Have fun, you two. With that, she walked off to the back room, leaving me alone with Lee, who was staring at me like he was sizing me up. Trying to break the ice, I offered, Hi, my name is... Save it, he cut me off sharply. I don't want to get attached, just in case. I liked Rob. He was a friend. Now, well, it's best not to talk about what happened to him. Just do your job and follow the rules, and you should be fine. I wasn't sure how to respond to his bluntness, but he seemed more approachable than Ed, so I just walked over to the bagging station, gave him a mock salute, and forced a smile. It was going to be a long night. The first customer approached, and Lee silently scanned their items. I reached for a few bags when I suddenly felt a sharp kick to my leg. Lee glared at me like I had just insulted his entire family. What? I thought I was supposed to... Then I noticed the customer's frown and remembered the rules. What type of bag would you like? I asked, trying to recover. The customer, an older woman, sneered at me before flatly replying, Paper, please. She then did her best to ignore me while I bagged her items, which mostly consisted of groceries, produce, meat, dairy. But there were a few odd items like a set of kitchen knives and what looked like boxes of firearm ammunition. I almost asked about them, but then the rules came back to me. I focused on the task, finished bagging her items, and she left without a word as more customers began lining up. As the night dragged on, the items started to get stranger and more disturbing. One customer purchased zip ties, large amounts of what looked like medical-grade sedatives, and several bags of candy. Another customer bought an unsettling amount of various types of ammunition and a few large fruits like watermelon and honeydew. I thought maybe he was just into target practice until I noticed what appeared to be a Kevlar vest and an uncomfortable amount of alcohol. After dealing with about a dozen customers with unsettling purchases, I finally encountered someone who seemed normal, a kindly old woman who was chatty and pleasant. It was a much-needed break, and I actually enjoyed talking with her. Her name was Marge, and she was just buying some baking supplies, eggs, butter, flour, spices, all pretty standard stuff. You simply must try my raspberry tart. It's divine. I'll bring some by next time. Or better yet, I think I still have some in my car. Won't you be a doll and help an old woman with her groceries? I was about to agree when I saw Lee's face go blank, and he subtly shook his head. I glanced back at Marge, who was grinning widely. Then I looked down at the rest of her unbagged groceries, containers of various chemicals, including rat poison, bleach, and ammonia. I tried to respond, but my voice caught in my throat, and she asked again, her tone dripping with insistence. Come on, dear. My hip's not what it used to be after my fall. It'll only take a minute, and you can enjoy a treat and a nice tip, too. Her grin twisted into something that made my skin crawl. I finally managed to stammer out, No, thank you, ma'am. Store policy says we can't escort customers out under any conditions. Her smile vanished, replaced by a flash of anger. Oh, well, your loss, I suppose. I would have made it worth your while. I thought I might snag one of the new ones before you caught on. Next time, Sonny, I might just find out where you live and make a house call." She winked at me as she pushed her cart away, leaving me frozen in shock at the sinister undertone in her words. Lee elbowed me in the side, bringing me back to the present. A new customer had already taken her place, and I was forced to push aside the unsettling encounter and carry on with the job. After what felt like an eternity of bagging groceries for an assortment of bizarre and disturbing customers, the PA system crackled to life with an ear-piercing screech announcing, "It is now 4 a.m. and we are closing. If you have not completed your purchases, you must leave. If you are loading goods, a reminder, no employees may leave with you. You must take them and exit immediately. Failure to comply will result in confiscation of your items. Any customers lingering in the store will be confiscated as well." Geez, they weren't kidding about that strict closing time. A group of people I hadn't seen before started moving through the aisles, flashlights and batons in hand. They had to be the store's security team, though they looked more like a paramilitary unit than your typical grocery store guards. They seemed to be checking for any stragglers. That announcement about lingering customers being confiscated suddenly seemed a lot more ominous given how seriously these guys were taking it. We, the staff, were ushered out just like the customers, all of us silent as we left. I tried to crack a joke to Lee, asking if overtime was ever an option, but he just kept his head down, ignoring me. I didn't know what kind of operation I'd gotten myself into, but the more I learned, the more I regretted taking this job. Still, I couldn't afford to quit, not until I had enough saved up for Danny's treatment. I stuck it out at Schur's for a few more weeks, enduring more unsettling conversations and handling increasingly creepy and unmentionable items for customers who seemed to grow more malevolent by the day. I witnessed, or rather, overheard 2 more code blacks during that time. Lee warned me not to look and to avoid drawing the attention of the customers involved. After the first one, which happened during my second week, I noticed that Jay, the other bag boy, was gone. When I asked Lee about it, he told me not to ask questions, and that was enough to make me terrified of what would happen if I ever had to deal with one of those code blacks myself. On the bright side, the store paid bi-weekly, and to my surprise, almost no taxes were deducted from my paycheck. I'd earned nearly $2,800 from my first 2 weeks. With a bit more and some savings from my other job, I'd be able to afford Danny's treatment. I just had to stick it out for 2 more weeks, and then I could quit this nightmare of a job and never come back. I managed to avoid trouble during my 3rd week, but things took a turn for the worse during my final week. It all began with a disastrous encounter with a customer, setting off a chain of events so horrifying that the repercussions still threaten my family's safety and haunt me to this day. It was around 11 p.m., and things were going relatively smoothly. Some of the managers were milling around, creating an odd atmosphere of concern and anticipation. Lee mentioned that Mr. Shui himself would be stopping by that night. I was trying to ask more about the owner when a large bald man approached our checkout. He wore horn-rimmed glasses and had a jowly face that was fixed in a leering grin that made my skin crawl. He tried to chat with me, but I felt extremely uneasy around him. I tried to brush him off, but he wouldn't let up. "Come on, lighten up. I see you're new here. What's it like working here? You seen any real action?" I responded with the only thing I could think of. "What type of bag would you like, sir?" He laughed, a jarring, belly-shaking laugh that almost knocked his glasses off, and said, "I'll show you my bag if you show me yours." He continued to smile with a sickly gleam in his eyes. After a moment, he added, "Plastic's fine, I suppose." Just trying to lighten the mood. "You look tense. You could use a break." I ignored him as I bagged a mix of junk food, pliers, lube, condoms, and various chemicals like bleach and OxyClean. I'd gotten somewhat used to the oddities of the customers and their unsettling purchases, but this man felt especially vile. "You could definitely use a break," he continued. "How about this? I can give you a little pick-me-up in my car. I'm right outside. Help me carry this stuff out, and I'm your huckleberry." I was so repulsed that I could barely think straight. I clung to the rule book and told him, "We're not allowed to leave the store with customers for any reason." To my horror, he didn't let it go. "Come on, you're just playing hard to get. I'm sure I can pay you more than these people. Seriously, what do you say? Come out and we can talk about it. I repeated the rules, trying to remain professional while bagging the last of his items, but he wouldn't back down. Listen up, you little shit. Think you're too good for me? Think you're hot stuff? Well, you're coming outside now. No one ignores me like this. I've got a special treat for stubborn pricks who don't listen, he spat, his face bright red and furious. Panic set in, but then I remembered the button by the bagging station. I pressed it discreetly while trying to maintain my composure, though I was visibly shrinking back from his vile outburst. I took a step back, and he advanced on me as if to grab me. To my relief, a massive figure stepped in, a nearly 7-foot-tall man in a bizarre mix of police riot gear and military armor. He placed a firm, gloved hand on the customer's shoulder. The enraged man turned to yell at the security guard, "Do you idiots know who I am?" "I know the owner. You'll all regret crossing me. I'm going to—" A sickening crunch interrupted him, and he went limp. The guard had struck him with a bloodied baton, then bent over the dazed customer. The man, still conscious but disoriented, tried to beg, "Wait, wait!" before the guard, with a swift punch to the chest, likely broke his ribs. The helmeted guard turned to me and asked, "What type of bag was he using?" Confused, I replied, "Plastic. He was using plastic bags." The guard chuckled beneath his mask and said, "Too bad he didn't pick paper." He then dumped out one of the customer's bags, pulled the plastic bag over the man's head, and tightened it. I was horrified as the guard effortlessly strangled him. The scene was beyond anything I could have imagined. After a few moments, it was over. Speechless, I watched as another guard arrived, and they took the customer's body on a stretcher to the back room. Benny, the store manager, appeared seemingly out of nowhere and addressed us. "I'm sorry you had to witness that, but I'm glad you're safe. We take threats very seriously here, and we need to keep this place secure from dangerous people like that. I trust that what happened here will remain confidential with you, right? We wouldn't want anyone like that knowing where you live." He gave us a chilling smile before heading to the back rooms. The veiled threat was clear. I couldn't report this madhouse to any real authorities. Despite the horrific encounter, my night wasn't over yet. The worst was still to come. Lee wouldn't discuss what we had just witnessed, and we both tried to act like nothing had happened. The clock was ticking closer to 4 a.m., and I could almost taste the freedom of leaving this place and getting home to my little girl. Just a couple more days and I'd be out of here for good. A few customers were left in line, and just as we were about to close, something strange occurred. A well-dressed man approached checkout number 2, but the light above it was turned off, and the cashier said the scanner was down. It seemed odd since the scanner had been working fine all night. The guarded looks and anxious expressions exchanged between the staff and the man made my heart sink. I realized he might be one of those special customers. I glanced at Lee, who was visibly sweating and nervously handling the cash register. The man strolled over to our checkout, carrying a small basket with sewing thread, thimbles, and tailoring tools. However, it also contained a hacksaw, a plaster cast, and several boxes of nails and rivets. The mix of items seemed odd, but I tried to stay calm. Lee, looking pale, scanned the items in silence. Once they were on the conveyor, the man turned to me, tipped his hat, and introduced himself. "Good evening, my friend. I'm Henry Jaspin. I run a small antique clothing shop and am here to pick up some materials." I was starting to feel more at ease, thinking this wasn't too out of the ordinary. I asked, "What type of bags would you like today, Mr. Jaspin?" "Well, my good fellow," he began with a smile, "I think paper will do for these small items. I found all the tailoring supplies I need to create work anyone would admire. But what I really need tonight is a body bag, preferably the larger size." My heart raced as I processed what he had just said. A body bag? It dawned on me that I had just encountered my first code black. I forced my trembling hand to press the black button under the bagging station. An alert buzzed on nearby walkie-talkies, and a voice announced, "Code black on number 3. Confirmations echoed around the store. There was a sudden flurry of activity as Benny approached us. I handed Mr. Jaspin his bag of smaller items, trying to maintain composure amidst the chaos. "Good evening, Mr. Jaspin," Benny managed to say, his usual confidence replaced with nervousness. "Oh, Benny, don't worry. I know what I asked for. And while you're a big guy, I wouldn't dream of picking you. Besides, with your skin, can you imagine one of our suits on you?" Mr. Jaspin burst into laughter, and Benny gave a nervous chuckle in response. "Your new employee, however," Mr. Jaspin continued, turning his gaze to me. "He has a strong jaw and broad shoulders. Not as much meat, though." His eyes roamed over me, and I was filled with dread at what he might mean. Benny, trying to steer the situation, said, "Of course, you're free to choose as you please, but if I could make a suggestion, we just processed a rather unruly individual a few hours ago. He's on the larger side and might be a good option." "Of course, Benny, you and your new hire lead the way," Mr. Jaspin said. I followed Benny, with Mr. Jaspin trailing behind us. We moved to a key card-locked door that led into the basement. Benny gave me an apologetic glance as we descended into the basement, and I was confronted with a scene of chilling horror. The basement was dark and freezing, resembling a meat locker more than anything else. When the lights flickered on, I had to stifle a gasp. Rows and rows of body bags surrounded us, most of them filled with decomposing corpses. The sight was like a morgue, and I felt sickened by the realization that these were the products we'd been handling. The options were indeed paper, plastic, and body bags. As I stood there in stunned silence, Mr. Jaspin calmly inspected the inventory. He pinched and prodded the bodies, offering occasional tuts and murmurs of dissatisfaction. When he reached the body Benny had suggested, he commented, "My, he's a big fellow. Plenty of material to work with. Skin's a bit dry in places, a touch of eczema, but that's all right. I'll take him." I'll inform Mr. Shy. Benny let out a sigh of relief and began guiding me out of the ghastly room. As we left, I caught a glimpse of Mr. Jaspin's choice and had to cover my mouth to suppress a gasp. It was the belligerent customer from earlier, his face marred by the dent from when security had struck him. Even in death, his eyes seemed to leer with the same malevolent intent. The revelation about the store's true nature is chilling. The kanji for Shiri, see making up the name of the store, makes the entire experience even more horrifying. It's no wonder you felt a deep sense of dread and urgency to get out. It sounds like you made the right choice by quitting and focusing on your family's safety. If you need any help with finding another way to raise the money, or just need to talk about what happened, I'm here for you.